General Frank Cooper arrived on the second wave of human ships, bringing additional Marines and what he called practical training equipment. The equipment turned out to be obstacle courses, combat simulators, and enough small arms to outfit a small army. "We have 10 days before the Vorth scouts arrive," Cooper announced to the assembled human and Calorian officers. "That means we have 10 days to teach your people how to stay alive." Admiral Zixton looked uncomfortable with the blunt language. Surely there must be a diplomatic solution. Perhaps if we offered the Vorth alternative resources. "The Vorth don't negotiate," Major Amy Grant replied, checking her tablet full of intelligence reports. "According to your own data, they've never once responded to communication attempts." The training began the next morning on the surface of Sanctuary Prime, the Calorian capital world. Sergeant Tony Martinez had volunteered to run the basic combat course, thinking it would be simple work. He was wrong. The first group of Calorian volunteers arrived wearing flowing ceremonial robes and expressions of polite curiosity. They moved with the graceful coordination of dancers. But when Martinez demonstrated a basic forward roll, 3 of them fainted from the sight of someone deliberately throwing themselves at the ground. "It's just a combat roll," Martinez explained to Dr. Kevin Ross, who was documenting the training for the human command staff. "You roll to avoid enemy fire and get back to your feet quickly." "Why would anyone shoot at you?" asked Veltar, one of the Calorian trainees. "Wouldn't it be more efficient to simply ask you to move?" Martinez stared at the alien, then looked at Dr. Ross. "How do I explain that the enemy wants to kill us?" "The concept of intentional harm is difficult for them," Ross replied quietly. "On their world, violence is literally unthinkable." The physical training was even worse. Standard human PT nearly killed the Calorians, whose bodies were adapted for low gravity and peaceful living. When Martinez demonstrated push-ups, the aliens watched in horror as he repeatedly threw himself face first toward the ground. "This is self-harm behavior," announced their harmony coordinator. "Perhaps the human requires psychological counseling." Captain Julie Adams had better luck with technical training. The Calorians were brilliant engineers, and they understood the theory behind human weapon systems even if they couldn't grasp why anyone would build them. "Your projectile weapons are incredibly primitive," observed Chief Engineer Kixelon, studying a human rifle. "But the engineering is elegant in its simplicity." "Simple means reliable," Adams explained. "When you're fighting for your life, you want weapons that work every time. Why not simply retreat to a safer location?" Kixelon asked. Adams paused in her demonstration. "Sometimes there is no safer location. Sometimes you have to stand and fight." The concept clearly troubled the Calorian engineer, but he continued studying the weapon designs with professional interest. Paul Henderson and Claire Stevens worked with the Calorian technicians to integrate human and alien systems. The cultural differences made every conversation an exercise in diplomacy. "We need to mount these railguns on your ships," Henderson explained, pointing to the technical specifications. "But they will damage the aesthetic harmony of our hull designs," protested the Calorian shipwright. "They'll also damage anyone trying to kill you." Stevens replied, "Why would anyone want to kill us?" The shipwright asked with genuine confusion. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Sam Parker volunteered to take a mixed crew on patrol duty. His ship, the EDF Guardian, carried both human and Calorian personnel on a reconnaissance mission to the outer system. The Calorians watched with fascination as Parker ran his ship through combat drills. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, calling out contacts and coordinates while preparing weapon systems. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, called Specialist Lisa Garcia from the sensor station. Unknown vessel, Vorth configuration. "Battle stations," Parker ordered calmly. The Calorians on the bridge froze as alarms sounded throughout the ship. The humans moved quickly to their positions, checking weapons and shields with the casual efficiency of people who had done this 1,000 times before. "It's just a scout probe," reported Garcia. "No weapons detected." "Destroy it before it can report back," Parker decided. "Wait," called out Nixtar, the Calorian observer. "Perhaps we should attempt communication first." Parker looked at the alien with patient eyes. "That probe is gathering intelligence on our defenses. If it reports back, the Vorth will know exactly how many ships we have and where we're positioned. But destroying it without provocation would be murder," Nixtar protested. "It's a robot," Parker explained. and it's gathering information to help the Vorth kill your people. The concept took several seconds to penetrate. When it did, Nixtar's large eyes went wide with understanding and horror. Fire, Parker ordered. The railgun spoke once, a brief flash of accelerated metal that crossed space in milliseconds. The Vorth probe vanished in a brief flare of disrupted atoms. Target destroyed, Garcia reported. The Calorians on the bridge stared at the empty space where the probe had been. They had just witnessed their first act of deliberate destruction, and the humans had done it as casually as swatting an insect. "How do you live with it?" Nixtar asked quietly. "Live with what?" Parker replied. "The violence, the constant threat of death. How do you function knowing that others want to harm you?" Parker considered the question seriously. "I guess we don't think about it too much. It's just how things are. You do what you have to do to protect the people you care about." Word of the incident spread quickly through the Calorian fleet. The aliens began to understand that their human allies were fundamentally different from any species they had ever encountered. Dr. Ross documented their reactions in his daily reports to Earth. "The Calorians are struggling to comprehend human nature," he wrote. "They see our willingness to use violence as both terrifying and necessary. Some are beginning to ask if they can learn to be more like us." The answer came during the next training session. Veltar, who had fainted during Martinez's first demonstration, approached the sergeant with determined eyes. "Teach me to fight," he requested. Martinez looked at the fragile alien, then at Dr. Ross. "Are you sure about this?" "My family lives on Sanctuary Prime," Veltar replied. "If the Vorth come, I want to be able to protect them." The training that followed was painful for everyone involved. Veltar could barely handle human gravity, let alone human combat techniques, but he kept trying, falling down and getting back up with stubborn determination that surprised the Marines. "He's got guts," Martinez admitted to Colonel Hayes. "Wrong body for fighting, but he's got the heart for it." Other Calorians began volunteering for training. Despite their obvious fear and physical limitations, they couldn't match human strength or endurance, but they could learn to use human weapons and tactics. The real test came when the Vorth scouts finally arrived. 3 massive probe ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, their angular hulls bristling with sensors and communication arrays. They began methodical scans of the inner planets, cataloging defenses and population centers. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral Zixtown ordered, his voice shaking slightly. The combined human-Calorian fleet moved to intercept, with Captain Rodriguez coordinating the attack. The Calorians had wanted to approach peacefully and attempt communication, but the humans convinced them that stealth and surprise were better options. "Remember, these are scouts," Rodriguez broadcasted to all ships. "They need to be destroyed before they can report back to the main fleet." The battle was brief and one-sided. The Vorth scouts were heavily armored but not expecting resistance. The human railguns punched through their shields like paper, while Calorian energy weapons provided precise targeting support. When it was over, 3 Vorth hulks drifted lifeless in space, their wreckage already being analyzed by human engineers. "We did it," Admiral Zixtown said with wonder in his voice. "We actually defeated them." "We won this round," Rodriguez corrected. "But the main fleet is still coming and they'll be ready for us now." The victory celebration on Sanctuary Prime was subdued. The Calorians were proud of their success but troubled by what they had been forced to become. For the first time in their history, they had deliberately destroyed other beings, even if those beings were machines bent on their extinction. "We are changing," Admiral Zixtown confided to Captain Rodriguez during the post-battle meeting. "Your people are teaching us things that go against everything we believe about civilization. Maybe civilization means different things to different species," Rodriguez replied. "For humans, being civilized means protecting those who can't protect themselves." The Calorian admiral considered this. "And if protecting others requires violence? Then you do what you have to do," Rodriguez said simply. As the combined fleet prepared for the arrival of the main Vorth force, both species had learned important lessons. The Calorians had discovered that they possessed courage they never knew they had, while the humans had learned that sometimes the most important victories were the ones that changed people, rather than just defeating enemies. The real war was about to begin, and neither species would be the same when it ended. The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbited Earth like a metal moon, its massive dish antennas turning slowly toward the stars. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat at his console, watching endless streams of data flow across his screen. It was another quiet night shift in the year 2387, with nothing but background radiation and the occasional comet to break the silence. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his coffee. The station had been listening to space for over a century, hoping to find signs of intelligent life. So far, they had found nothing but cosmic noise and their own satellites talking back to Earth. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange," called Ryan Burke from the communications station. The young specialist had been on duty for only 6 months, but he knew the difference between normal space chatter and something unusual. Jake walked over to Ryan's station and looked at the readouts. The signal was unlike anything they had seen before. It was clearly artificial, with complex patterns that suggested intelligence, but it came from a star system 47 light-years away. "When did this start?" Jake asked, his pulse quickening. "About 10 minutes ago," Ryan replied. "The signal is getting stronger. Whatever is sending this has serious power behind it." Jake activated the emergency protocol and called Dr. Lisa Carter, the station's xenolinguist. Lisa had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, studying theoretical alien languages and communication patterns. She arrived at the communications center within minutes, still wearing her pajamas under her lab coat. "This is really it, isn't it?" Lisa whispered as she studied the signal patterns. Her hands shook slightly as she began running the data through her translation programs. "How long will it take to decode?" Jake asked. "Could be hours, could be days," Lisa said, already lost in her work. "But look at these patterns. They're mathematical, which is good. Math is universal." Ryan continued monitoring the signal while Lisa worked. The transmission repeated every 12 minutes exactly. Whatever was sending it wanted to make sure someone heard the message. 3 hours later, Lisa looked up from her computer with wide eyes. "I've got something," she announced. "It's not complete, but I can make out key words." Jake and Ryan gathered around her workstation as Lisa pulled up her translation. "The message starts with basic math and physics constants," she explained. "That's how they establish that they're intelligent. Then it moves to what looks like a star map, showing their location. But then—" Lisa paused, her face growing pale. "What is it?" Jake pressed. "They're asking for help," Lisa said quietly. "The word keeps repeating. Help, assistance, aid. And there's another word that appears frequently. I think it means dying or extinction." Jake felt his stomach drop. Humanity's first contact with alien life, and they were listening to a death cry. The next few hours passed in a blur. Jake contacted his superiors, who contacted their superiors all the way up to the Global Defense Council. By morning, the station was crawling with officials, scientists, and military personnel. Captain Alex Rodriguez arrived on the first transport from Earth. She was known throughout the Defense Force as someone who made hard decisions quickly and stuck by them. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her uniform was perfectly pressed despite the early hour. "What do we know?" she asked Jake as soon as she stepped off the transport. "The signal comes from the Kepler 442 system," Jake reported. "Dr. Carter has translated about 60% of the message. It's definitely a distress call." Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Show me everything." In the briefing room, Lisa presented her findings to the assembled group. The alien message told a horrifying story. A peaceful civilization called the Calorian Republic was under attack by something called the Vorth Collective. The Vorth were described as machines that consumed entire worlds, turning planets into raw materials for their endless expansion. "The Calorians have 3 star systems," Lisa explained. 2 have already fallen. They estimate they have less than a year before the Vorth reach their final stronghold. "What exactly are they asking for?" asked General Frank Cooper, the Defense Council's representative. "Advanced weapons technology, military advisors, or diplomatic intervention," Lisa replied. "They seem to think any spacefaring civilization would have experience with warfare." The room fell silent. Humanity had been exploring space for centuries, but they had never encountered hostile aliens. Their weapons were designed for defense against asteroids and space pirates, not alien war machines. "There's something else," Lisa continued. "The message includes data about their own technology. They're asking for help, but they're also sharing everything they know about the Vorth. Ship designs, weapon capabilities, battle tactics." Captain Rodriguez studied the alien data on her tablet. The Vorth ships were massive, with energy weapons that could crack planets. Their armor was nearly impenetrable, and they fought with perfect coordination. "How far is their system?" she asked. 47 light-years, replied Dr. Kevin Ross, the station's astrophysicist. "With our fastest ships, it would take 3 months to reach them." "That's assuming we decide to go," General Cooper said carefully. "The Council hasn't authorized any response yet." Captain Rodriguez looked around the room at the assembled scientists and officials. "How many ships could we send?" "The Defense Force has 12 deep space cruisers ready for deployment," Jake answered. "Each carries a crew of 300 plus Marines and support personnel." "That's against an enemy that destroyed 2 star systems," General Cooper pointed out. "We'd be vastly outnumbered." "But we'd be the only help they're going to get," Captain Rodriguez replied. "This message has been broadcasting for weeks. If there were other advanced civilizations in range, they would have responded by now." The debate continued for hours. Some argued that humanity should focus on defending Earth rather than getting involved in an alien war. Others pointed out that if the Vorth were truly expanding across the galaxy, Earth would eventually be in their path anyway. Dr. Lisa Carter made the argument that finally swayed the group. "This isn't just about helping aliens," she said. "This is about what kind of species we want to be when we take our place in the galaxy. Do we want to be the kind of people who ignore cries for help?" Captain Rodriguez stood up and addressed the room. "I'm recommending to the Council that we respond to this distress call. We may not have the most advanced technology, but we have something these Calorians need." "What's that?" General Cooper asked. "Experience with fighting for survival," Rodriguez replied. "Earth isn't exactly a peaceful garden world. We know how to adapt, how to take risks, and how to keep fighting when the odds are against us." 2 days later, the Global Defense Council approved the mission by a narrow vote. Captain Rodriguez was given command of the rescue fleet, with orders to provide whatever assistance possible to the Calorian Republic. As the fleet prepared for departure, Jake Morrison worked with Ryan Burke to send humanity's first message to the stars. It was simple and direct. Message received. Help is coming. The response from the Calorians came back within hours, faster than light travel should have allowed. Their reply was filled with gratitude and hope, but also with detailed warnings about the Vorth capabilities. What the humans didn't know was that their response had caused panic in the Calorian command center. The aliens had expected help from a fellow civilized species, beings who understood diplomacy and fought with honor. Instead, they were about to meet creatures from a death world, beings who had evolved in an environment so hostile that merely surviving to adulthood was considered an achievement by galactic standards. The rescue fleet departed Earth 3 days later, carrying humanity's best intentions and worst habits toward a meeting that would change both species forever. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Calorian system. Their ships arranged in a defensive formation that Captain Alex Rodriguez had learned during asteroid belt patrol duty. The EDF Valiant led the group, its hull scarred from countless encounters with space debris and small meteorites. "Contact on sensors," reported Ryan Burke from the communication station. "Multiple ships approaching from the inner system." Captain Rodriguez studied the tactical display. The approaching vessels were unlike anything in human databases. They moved with graceful curves instead of straight lines, their hulls seeming to flow like liquid metal rather than the angular designs humans preferred. "Open communications," Rodriguez ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of an alien ship. The creature that appeared was tall and thin, with pale translucent skin that seemed to glow softly. Its large eyes took up nearly a quarter of its face, and delicate hands with 6 fingers gestured gracefully as it spoke. "Greetings, brave allies," the alien said in perfectly translated English. "I am Admiral Zixtan of the Calorian Republic. We are grateful beyond words that someone answered our call for help." Rodriguez stepped forward. "I'm Captain Alex Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress signal and came as quickly as we could." Admiral Zixtan's large eyes widened even further. "Earth Defense Force. You have experience with warfare then?" "Excellent. We have prepared detailed briefings on Vorth capabilities and tactical weaknesses." "We'll need to see everything you have," Rodriguez replied. "But first we'd like to meet face to face. Diplomatic protocols." The Calorian admiral paused, tilting his head in a way that reminded Rodriguez of a curious bird. "Face to face? Yes, of course. Though I must warn you, Our atmospheric requirements may be different. 2 hours later, the docking bay of the Valiant received its first alien visitors. Admiral Zixton emerged from his shuttle accompanied by several other Calorians, all wearing what appeared to be ceremonial robes rather than military uniforms. Dr. Kevin Ross monitored the atmospheric readings as the aliens removed their breathing apparatus. The Calorian homeworld apparently had thinner air and lower gravity than Earth. The visiting aliens moved carefully, as if afraid of breaking something. "Welcome aboard," Captain Rodriguez said, extending her hand in greeting. Admiral Zixtan stared at her outstretched hand for a moment before gingerly touching it with 2 fingers. His skin was cool and seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. "Your vessel is very—" The Admiral paused, searching for words, robust. Rodriguez looked around the docking bay, seeing it through alien eyes. The walls were thick metal plates designed to withstand explosive decompression. Emergency equipment hung from every surface and warning signs covered nearly every panel. "It has to be," she replied. "Space is dangerous." The diplomatic meeting took place in the ship's conference room, with Colonel Danny Hayes representing the Marine contingent and Dr. Kevin Ross providing scientific expertise. The Calorians had brought their own specialists, including someone they called a harmony coordinator and a peaceful resolution facilitator. The Vorth Collective consists of approximately 40,000 vessels, Admiral Zixton began, projecting holographic images above the conference table. They strip mine entire planets, converting the raw materials into more ships and manufacturing facilities. Colonel Hayes leaned forward to study the ship designs. The Vorth vessels were massive geometric shapes, all angles and armor plating. Their weapons appeared to be energy-based with no visible projectile systems. "How do they fight?" Hayes asked. "They advance in perfect formation," the Admiral replied. "Their coordination is flawless. They do not retreat, they do not negotiate. They simply consume everything in their path." "What about their weak points?" Rodriguez asked. The Calorians exchanged glances. "We have not discovered any," Admiral Zixton admitted. "Our strategy has been to evacuate civilian populations and fall back to more defensible positions." Hayes and Rodriguez looked at each other. In human military doctrine, continuous retreat was called losing. "What weapons do you have?" Hayes asked. "We possess advanced energy shields and precision beam weapons," one of the Calorian specialists replied proudly. "Our ships can maintain harmony with local spacetime, reducing sensor detection." Dr. Ross pulled up the technical specifications on his tablet. The Calorian technology was elegant and sophisticated, but everything was designed for minimal impact. Their weapons could disable enemy systems without causing unnecessary destruction. Their shields diverted attacks rather than absorbing them. "Very impressive," Rodriguez said diplomatically. "What about close combat weapons?" The question caused visible confusion among the Calorians. "Close combat?" Admiral Zixton asked. "Hand-to-hand fighting," Colonel Hayes clarified. "When enemies board your ships," the aliens looked horrified. "Why would anyone board an enemy vessel?" the Harmony coordinator asked. "That would be extremely dangerous." Hayes opened his mouth to explain, then closed it again. He looked at Rodriguez, who gave him a warning shake of her head. "Could we see some of your tactical simulations?" Rodriguez asked instead. The Calorians eagerly displayed their battle plans. Every strategy involved elegant withdrawals, minimal casualties, and eventual diplomatic solutions. Their idea of aggressive tactics was jamming enemy communications while retreating to a safer position. Dr. Ross studied their technology reports and discovered something troubling. The Calorian homeworld had gravity 60% of Earth normal, an atmosphere with half the oxygen content, and no large predators. The most dangerous creature on their planet was something equivalent to a rabbit. "Admiral," Rodriguez said carefully, "what was your species' greatest historical conflict?" "The Great Disagreement of 2847, Zixton replied promptly. "Two of our worlds had different opinions about mineral extraction methods. It lasted almost 3 months before we reached a compromise." "How many casualties?" Hayes asked. "Casualties?" The Admiral looked confused. "No one was injured. Why would anyone be injured during a disagreement?" The conference room fell silent. The humans were beginning to understand what they were dealing with. The Calorians were not just peaceful. They were completely innocent of violence. They had never fought a war, never lost soldiers in battle, never had to make the hard choices that survival demanded. Perhaps we could review your military training procedures, Rodriguez suggested. The Calorians displayed their training programs with pride. Young Calorians learned meditation techniques, conflict resolution, and advanced engineering. Their version of military training involved team-building exercises and philosophy courses. What about weapons training? Hayes asked. Our weapons are automated, a Calorian specialist explained. Individuals do not operate them directly. That would require someone to actively choose to cause harm. Hayes looked like he was developing a headache. Rodriguez quickly moved the discussion to logistics and supply chains, safer topics that didn't reveal how fundamentally different the two species were. After the Calorians returned to their ships, the human senior staff gathered in Rodriguez's quarters. The mood was grim. They're going to get slaughtered, Hayes said bluntly. They have no idea how to fight. They think war is some kind of philosophical debate. Their technology is advanced, Dr. Ross pointed out. Maybe we can work with that. Technology doesn't win wars, Hayes replied. People do. And these people have never hurt a fly in their entire evolutionary history. Rodriguez stared out the porthole at the Calorian fleet. Their ships were beautiful, flowing works of art that looked more like sculptures than warships. The humans had come expecting to find experienced allies. Instead, they had found the galactic equivalent of helpless children. What are we going to do? Dr. Ross asked. We're going to help them, Rodriguez said firmly. That's what we came here to do. Help, Hayes demanded. We can't teach them to be warriors overnight. They don't even understand the concept of acceptable losses. Then we'll have to be their warriors, Rodriguez replied. We'll fight the Vorth for them. Hayes shook his head. 12 ships against 40,000. Those are suicide odds. Rodriguez turned from the porthole to face her officers. Maybe, but we didn't come here to run away at the first sign of trouble. We came here to help, and that's what we're going to do. The next morning brought worse news. Long-range sensors detected the Vorth advance fleet approaching the system. They would arrive in less than 2 weeks, and the main force was only a month behind them. Admiral Zixton contacted the human fleet with desperate urgency. Our defense committee has reviewed your ship specifications, he said. We do not understand. Your vessels appear designed for warfare, but your technology is primitive compared to ours. How do you expect to fight the Vorth? Rodriguez chose her words carefully. Admiral, our ships may be primitive, but we have experience with survival. Sometimes primitive and determined beats advanced and overconfident. The Calorian admiral's expression suggested he found this idea incomprehensible. On his world, advanced always meant better. The concept of gaining advantage through desperation and stubborn refusal to quit was completely foreign to his thinking. We shall see, Admiral Zixton said uncertainly. The Vorth will be here soon. The Vorth main fleet arrived like a dark storm across the stars, 40,000 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Their massive hulks blotted out entire constellations as they approached the inner system with mechanical precision. Commander Nick Thompson watched the sensor displays from his position aboard the orbital defense platform. The numbers were overwhelming. Even with the combined human and Calorian fleets, they were outnumbered 300 to 1. They're not even trying to hide, reported Specialist Laura Green from the communication station. Their formation is standard Vorth battle configuration according to the database. That's because they don't think we can hurt them, Thompson replied grimly. They destroyed 2 star systems with this same approach. Captain Julie Adams coordinated ground defenses from the surface of Sanctuary Prime. The human Marines had spent the last week training Calorian civilians in basic survival tactics, though the results were mixed at best. Remember, when the shooting starts, you get underground and stay there. Adams told a group of Calorian volunteers. Don't try to be heroes. But if the Vorth land on our world, shouldn't we fight back? Asked Veltar, who had become something of a leader among the Calorian trainees. You fight smart, not hard, Adams replied. You use hit-and-run tactics. You strike when they're not expecting it, and you never give them a fair fight. The concept still seemed foreign to the Calorians, but they were learning. Fear was a powerful teacher, and the sight of the Vorth fleet had taught them more about survival in one day than centuries of peaceful evolution. The first engagement began at the outer edge of the system. The Vorth sent advance squadrons to probe the defenses, expecting the same easy victory they had achieved everywhere else. Instead, they encountered something their tactical computers couldn't process: humans fighting like humans. Lieutenant Sam. Parker led a squadron of modified Calorian ships against the Vorth probe force. The alien vessels had been retrofitted with human weapons and human tactics, creating a hybrid fighting style that confused the enemy sensors. Break formation and engage at will, Parker ordered, throwing out every rule of civilized space combat. The human pilots scattered like startled birds, attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. They used asteroids for cover, fired from concealment, and retreated when the odds turned against them, only to reappear from a different direction. The Vorth ships tried to respond with their standard tactics, but their coordination algorithms couldn't adapt to enemies who refused to fight fair. When they focused on one human ship, 3 others would attack from behind. When they spread out to cover more area, the humans would concentrate their fire on isolated targets. "They're adapting," reported engineer Ray Collins from his position aboard the EDF Valiant. "The Vorth are changing their formation patterns." "Good," Captain Rodriguez replied. "That means we're making them think instead of just following their programming." The real breakthrough came when Dr. Lisa Carter made a crucial discovery about Vorth psychology. Working with captured computer fragments from the destroyed scout ships, she uncovered the fundamental flaw in their collective intelligence. "They're purely logical," she explained to the command staff. "Every decision is based on statistical analysis and predictive modeling. They literally cannot comprehend irrational behavior." "What do you mean?" asked General Cooper. "I mean they expect their enemies to act in their own best interests," Carter replied. "They can predict retreat, negotiation, and even desperate last stands, but they can't predict someone charging into certain death just to buy time for others to escape." Colonel Hayes understood immediately. "They can't process sacrifice." "Exactly," Carter confirmed. "Sacrifice for others serves no logical purpose from their perspective. It doesn't improve survival odds or strategic position, so their computers simply don't account for it." The discovery changed everything. The human commanders began planning operations that were tactically insane but strategically brilliant. They designed attacks that no rational species would attempt, creating scenarios that broke the Vorth predictive models. Marine Captain Steve Wright volunteered for the first truly crazy mission. The Vorth had deployed a command ship in the asteroid belt, coordinating their fleet movements from what they thought was a safe position. "We're going to board it," Wright announced to his squad. "Sir, that ship has over 10,000 combat robots aboard," pointed out Sergeant Garcia. "We'd be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. "That's why they won't expect it," Wright replied with a grim smile. The boarding operation used a captured Calorian stealth ship to approach the Vorth command vessel. The plan was simple in its audacity: ram the stealth ship into the command center, fight through the robot defenders, and plant explosives in the main computer core. It was the kind of plan that any logical species would reject as suicide. "Insertion in 30 seconds, called the pilot as the stealth ship accelerated toward the Vorth hull. Wright's Marines checked their weapons one final time. They wore modified, Calorian energy shields that glowed like medieval armor, giving them protection against robot weapons while marking them as clearly human. The impact shook both ships as the stealth craft punched through the Vorth hull. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing the breach, but the Marines were already moving. "Contact front," called Corporal Martinez as robot defenders appeared in the corridor ahead. The Vorth robots opened fire with precise, measured shots designed to disable rather than destroy. Their programming still assumed they were fighting rational opponents who would surrender when faced with hopeless odds. Instead, they encountered humans who treated hopeless odds as a minor inconvenience. Wright's squad advanced through the hailstorm of energy beams, using their shields like Roman legionnaires. The robots' tactical computers couldn't understand why the humans kept moving forward, despite taking casualties. "Objective in sight," Wright reported as they reached the command center, beginning placement of charges. The Vorth defenders concentrated their fire on the humans, but the Marines had already accomplished their mission. When the explosives detonated, the command ship's central computer went dark, leaving thousands of Vorth vessels without coordination. Wright and most of his squad died in the explosion, but their sacrifice created chaos throughout the enemy fleet. Without central coordination, the Vorth ships began operating independently, making them vulnerable to human hit-and-run tactics. "The fleet coordination is breaking down," reported Commander Thompson from the orbital station. They're reverting to individual ship operations. Captain Rodriguez seized the opportunity immediately. All ships, commence Operation Madness. Target isolated vessels and withdraw before they can coordinate a response. Operation Madness was everything the name suggested, a series of attacks that made no tactical sense but created maximum confusion. Human ships would appear, fire everything they had at a single target, then disappear before the Vorth could respond. The Calorians provided crucial support with their advanced sensors and communication systems, but they watched the human tactics with growing amazement and horror. "They're completely insane," Admiral Zixtan observed as he watched human fighters charge directly into Vorth weapons fire. "But it's working." The tide of battle began to turn as the Vorth fleet struggled to adapt to enemies who refused to follow logical patterns. Their ships were designed for overwhelming firepower and perfect coordination, but humans specialized in chaos and unpredictability. Engineer Paul Henderson made another crucial discovery when he analyzed wreckage from destroyed Vorth ships. "Their armor is nearly impenetrable from the front," he reported, "but they never expected anyone to attack from multiple directions simultaneously." The finding led to new tactics that used Calorian agility and human aggression in combination. Calorian ships would use their superior maneuverability to position themselves for flanking attacks, while human vessels provided direct assault support. "It's like watching evolution in action," Dr. Ross noted in his reports. "The Calorians are learning to be aggressive, while we're learning to be more strategic." The greatest test came when the Vorth deployed their planet-killer weapon, a massive ship designed to crack worlds like eggs. Standard protocol for any civilized species would be evacuation and retreat. Instead, Colonel Hayes suggested something that made the Calorians question human sanity entirely. "We ram it," he said simply. "Ram a ship the size of a small moon?" Admiral Zixtan asked in disbelief. "With another ship the size of a small moon," Hayes confirmed. "We've got that captured Vorth heavy cruiser. We pack it with explosives, point it at their planet killer, and see what happens." "That would require someone to pilot it manually," pointed out Captain Rodriguez. "The navigation systems would never survive the trip." "I'll do it," volunteered Captain Greg Foster, whose ship had been destroyed in the previous engagement. The plan violated every rule of civilized warfare, military logic, and basic self-preservation. It was exactly the kind of desperate gamble that no rational species would attempt, which was precisely why it worked. Foster's suicide run caught the Vorth completely off guard. Their planet killer's defenses were designed to stop incoming missiles and energy weapons, not kamikaze attacks by ships the size of battlecruisers. The aftermath of the battle left both species forever changed. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt EDF Valiant, watching salvage crews work among the wreckage of 40,000 Vorth ships. The humans had won, but the cost had been enormous. "Final casualty reports," Major Amy Grant announced as she entered the observation lounge. "We lost 8 ships and over 2,000 personnel. The Calorians lost 30 vessels, but only 300 crew members." Rodriguez nodded grimly. The numbers told the story of 2 different approaches to warfare. Humans had thrown themselves into impossible situations and somehow survived through sheer stubborn determination. The Calorians had learned to fight smart, using their superior technology to minimize losses. "Any word from the outer system patrols?" Rodriguez asked. "Lieutenant Parker reports the last Vorth stragglers jumped to faster than light 3 hours ago," Grant replied. "Long-range sensors show they're heading back toward the galactic core. Running home to tell their friends about the crazy humans," Rodriguez said with a tired smile. The integration of human and Calorian forces had created something entirely new in galactic warfare. The combined fleet now patrolled the system borders with a mixture of human aggression and Calorian precision that made potential threats think twice about approaching. Dr. Kevin Ross had been busy documenting the cultural changes that resulted from the war. His research showed that both species had evolved during the conflict, adapting to each other's strengths while learning to overcome their own weaknesses. "The Calorians are developing what they call protective instincts," Ross explained during a briefing with the senior staff. "They're learning to value individual sacrifice for the greater good. And we're learning that sometimes the smart play beats the brave play," added Colonel Hayes. whose tactical thinking had become much more sophisticated after working with Calorian strategists. The real test of the new alliance came when long-range sensors detected another distress signal from a nearby system. A species called the Melodians was under attack by raiders, and their plea for help reached both human and Calorian receivers simultaneously. "What do we do?" Admiral Zixtan asked during the emergency council meeting. "Do we respond to another call for help?" The question sparked intense debate among both species. The humans were instinctively ready to charge off and help anyone in trouble, while the Calorians urged caution and careful planning. "We can't save the entire galaxy," pointed out Commander Thompson. "Our resources are limited, but we can't just ignore people who need help," countered Captain Adams. "That's not who we are." The compromise solution reflected both human impulses and Calorian wisdom. A small task force would respond to the distress call, but only after careful reconnaissance and strategic planning. Captain Sam Parker led the rescue mission with a mixed crew of humans and Calorians aboard the newly commissioned EDS Harmony, a ship that combined human durability with Calorian elegance. "The Melodians are aquatic," reported Dr. Lisa Carter as the task force approached the threatened system. "Their attackers appear to be automated mining platforms that have gone rogue." "Sounds familiar," Parker said grimly. "Let's see what we can do." The battle against the rogue mining platforms became a textbook example of combined human-Calorian tactics. The humans provided direct assault capabilities, while the Calorians used their advanced sensors to identify weak points in the enemy automation. "Target the central processing nodes," advised Veltar, who had become an expert in electronic warfare. "Disable their coordination and they become much easier to handle." The rescue operation succeeded with minimal casualties, marking the first victory of the new alliance. More importantly, it established a pattern that would define human-Calorian relations for centuries to come. Word of the alliance spread throughout the galaxy, carried by traders, refugees, and the occasional diplomatic mission. The story that emerged painted humans as terrifying warriors from a death world, while the Calorians were described as brilliant strategists who had learned to harness human aggression. "We're becoming legends," Dr. Ross noted with amusement as he reviewed intercepts of galactic communications. "Half the galaxy thinks we're heroes, the other half thinks we're monsters." "Maybe we're both," Captain Rodriguez replied. "Depends on which side you're on." The establishment of the first Earth embassy on Sanctuary Prime marked the beginning of formal diplomatic relations between the two species. General Cooper was appointed as the first human ambassador, bringing his military experience to the challenges of interspecies diplomacy. "Your people have taught us many things," Admiral Zixtan said during the embassy dedication ceremony. "Some of them we wished we had never learned, but all of them were necessary." "And your people taught us that there's more than one way to be strong," Cooper replied. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose not to fight." The galaxy had changed because of the human-Calorian alliance. Other species began forming their own mutual defense pacts, inspired by the example of cooperation between warriors and peacekeepers. But the most significant change was in the humans themselves. The experience of fighting alongside true pacifists had forced them to examine their own nature and find better ways to channel their aggressive instincts. "We're still the same species that evolved fighting saber-toothed tigers and ice ages," Dr. Ross wrote in his final report to Earth. "But we're learning to be more than just survivors. We're learning to be protectors." The Calorians faced their own cultural revolution as peaceful beings learned to value strength and courage. Their art began to celebrate heroes and warriors alongside philosophers and engineers. "We were incomplete before," Veltar explained to a gathering of young Calorians. "We thought civilization meant the absence of conflict. But we learned that sometimes civilization requires the willingness to fight for what matters." The transformation was not without its costs. Some humans struggled with the idea that violence should be a last resort rather than a first option. Some Calorians could not adapt to the reality that their peaceful universe no longer existed. But the majority of both species found strength in their alliance. The humans provided the courage to face impossible odds, while the Calorians offered the wisdom to know when fighting was necessary and when other solutions might work better. Years passed before the next major test of the alliance arrived. A new threat emerged from the galactic rim, something called the Harvester Swarm that made the Vorth Collective look like amateur raiders. Reports indicate they consume entire star systems, Admiral Zixton informed the Joint Defense Council. They are more dangerous than anything we have previously encountered. Then I guess it's time to see what we've learned, Captain Rodriguez replied, now promoted to Admiral of the Combined Fleet. The war against the Harvester Swarm would be humanity's second major galactic conflict, but this time, they would not fight alone. The Alliance had grown to include dozens of species, all inspired by the example of humans and Calorians working together. Message from the Melodian Fleet, reported Communications Officer Green. They're offering to join the Defense Force, and the Altarian Republic wants to contribute their shield technology, added Commander Burke. Admiral Rodriguez looked around the command center at the mixed crew of humans, Calorians, and other species who had chosen to stand together against the darkness. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All ships prepare for departure. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best defense was a good offense, and sometimes the most civilized thing you could do was fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The humans had answered an alien distress call expecting to find experienced allies. Instead, they had found something better. They had found family worth dying for. And in learning to protect others, they had discovered what it truly meant to be human. The stars held many more challenges, but whatever came next, two species who should never have been compatible had proven that differences in nature could become strengths when united by common purpose. The Deathworlders had answered the call for allies, and in doing so they had become something greater than either species could have achieved alone. They had become hope,